Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Haxie Myers-Belkin. Coming up on the show, the Democratic Republic of Congo declares itself Ebola-free, with health experts saying the use of an experimental vaccine was a major factor in containing the most recent outbreak of the virus. We'll be crossing to Kinshasa to speak with the World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa. At least 14 Nigerian senators defect from President Buhari's ruling party to join the opposition, a major blow to Buhari's hopes for a second term in office. And thousands of Kenyans find themselves homeless after parts of the country's largest slum are flattened to make way for a new road in the capital. After 48 days with no new cases, the Democratic Republic of Congo is Ebola-free. That announcement coming from the country's health minister. 33 people have died of the highly contagious virus since the beginning of April. 21 contracted the disease but survived. The apparent eradication follows the widespread use of an as-yet unlicensed vaccine. We can cross now to Kinshasa to speak with Dr. Matshidiso Moeti, who is the World Health Organization's Regional Director for Africa. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. Now, the Ebola epidemic of 2014 to 2016 killed some 11,300 people. The death toll this time round has been far, far lower. How was this outbreak contained as quickly and effectively as it was?
First of all, we are very pleased with this outcome to this outbreak and congratulate the government, the people, the health workers, the communities in the Democratic Republic of Congo. One of the most determining factors was the leadership and the speed with which the government came out and declared this outbreak, because it enabled WHO and our partners to mobilize resources to work together in order to be on the ground immediately to support what the country was doing. We had a great mobilization of different partners to work with the government, and we had a mechanism of coordination that worked extremely well. As the minister said, we had one plan. We all rallied around the plan. Everybody indicated what they could contribute, and there was a great coming together of different contributions, of financing from some of the donors, of logistic support from some of the UN agencies, the World Food Programme, MONUSCO, who are on the ground here, and technical partners who came and supported different areas like providing treatment for patients. And most importantly, something that we learned from the West African outbreak was that we need to engage people, communities on the ground immediately, early on, ensure that they understand what is going on. We understand where they're at in terms of their thinking, their beliefs, and we're able to work together to help them to adjust what they do so that they can stop the spread of the outbreak. And then, of course, we had the opportunity to deploy the vaccine that was tried out in West Africa early on in this epidemic. All of this, in our view, came together to help contain the situation in the way that this happened.
And what more can you tell me about this vaccine? How does it work, and when is it likely to be licensed?
Well, I can't tell you precisely when the vaccine is likely to be licensed. We've had an opportunity here to test it out on, we vaccinated, I believe, 1,700 or so people. And we will be able to analyze the outcome, the results in terms of its efficacy and any side effect of this vaccine. This is a big opportunity to understand how it works. And then it'll have to go through various stages of clinical trial. It's arrived now at stage 3 of a clinical trial, and we hope very soon it'll be able to be licensed and to be registered in countries to be used, hopefully, in the next Ebola outbreak.
Dr. Matshidiso Moeti, thank you very much for speaking to us here on France 24. A wave of defections from Nigeria's ruling APC party has cost it its majority in the country's upper house of parliament. At least 16 senators have announced their departure, with 14 saying they've decided to join the opposition People's Democratic Party. That dealing a major blow to President Muhammadu Buhari's hopes for re-election early next year. Earlier, I spoke to our correspondent in Lagos, Sam Ulokoy, and I asked him about the driving factors behind this mass defection.
There had been a build-up to this in the last couple of months, and it's reached a head when a group within the ruling party started accusing the government that it's not been able to meet its electoral promises. And it did not come as a surprise that this group decided to break away, and now they are, they've defected from the party. As to why now, the answer is quite simple. It's just 6 months before the next election. If you are going to contest under a different platform, for them this is just the right time to leave, to prepare very well, and then contest against the ruling party in the next 6 months.
Now, these defections will certainly make it harder for President Buhari to push through legislation, but just 6 months, as you just mentioned, before federal elections, this must be a huge blow to his hopes for a second term.
It's definitely one of the biggest blows the president has suffered, because if you have bills or whatever you want to do at the National Assembly, it becomes extremely difficult for him to pass these things through. I mean, there's funding which is needed for the coming election. These senators could as well block the president from getting this funding. So there's a likelihood they could frustrate him. And it's clear that the president himself is very uncomfortable. And that might account for why earlier today we saw policemen stopping the Senate president, stopping the deputy Senate president from leaving their houses. And the objective was to prevent them from going to the Senate to preside over this defection. So the government is definitely worried, and those in the ruling party are worried. For now, it's as if the chances of the ruling party coming back is definitely not as bright as it was like 6-7 months ago. So things are definitely not the best for the ruling party and for the president in particular, who is seeking re-election.
China is set to invest €12 billion in South Africa, in part by boosting its South African imports. That announcement coming from President Cyril Ramaphosa following a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Pretoria. Welcome news for Ramaphosa, who came to power in February, pledging to revive the economy and attract investors. Xi pledging that cash in South Africa ahead of a so-called BRIC summit of emerging economies. Bulldozers have demolished some 30,000 homes in Nairobi's largest slum, paving the way for construction of a major road. Residents were given just 2 weeks' notice to leave, in a move that's been condemned by Amnesty International. Although the Kenyan government insists people were living in the area illegally. Our regional correspondent Julia Steers sent us this from Nairobi's Kibera slum.
Demolition began early Monday morning and continued through Tuesday evening, and it was met immediately with outcry from residents here and from local and international human rights groups who say that there was no plan in place to properly resettle these residents before the demolition began. And residents living here tell us that at this time of year it will be particularly difficult for them to find a new place to live.
Okay, now there are no houses, first of all, but in case you get a house somewhere, the price has now doubled. If you were paying 2,500, now it is now 5,000, and we cannot manage.
For the people living in the slum, I think it's a big struggle. It's a big struggle to them. Because come to think of it, they pay for water, they pay for everything. But again, their houses get demolished in the name of development.
Now, the ultimate plan is to build a bypass that cuts all the way through this informal settlement and will displace up to 30,000 people. And while the plan is legal and the government claims to have provided eviction notices, rights groups here and residents living here say that the government needs to do better to provide them with some sort of compensation or a clear plan of action as to whether or not they will be resettled. And for people living here, they say the optics from the government side are not good. To them, they're displacing the poor people living here in order to build a road for the wealthy.
Against a backdrop of religious and ethnic tensions, some 24 candidates are campaigning ahead of Mali's presidential election on Sunday. The incumbent President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta is favourite to win again. But here we take a look at Soumaïla Cissé, his main rival. This report by Hamza Oubi and Christelle Pierre.
Bearing the colours of the main opposition party, green and white, supporters of its leader, Soumaïla Cissé, have mobilised across Mali.
Soumaïla Cissé is a man of honour, a man of quality.
He's an economist. He knows how to run the country.
He was a minister. He's managed many departments in the country.
He's an upright and fair man. I'm for Soumaïla Cissé.
Mali is beset with threats to its security, from religious and ethnic tensions to jihadist attacks. Former Minister of Finance, Soumaïla Cissé, promises to focus on security and to uphold the country's struggling peace accord and put an end to corruption. To achieve this, Cissé puts dialogue above all else.
We have to talk to Malians. The people have to talk to each other. As we say here, we have to identify the illness to then be able to treat it. That's why it's important to start with a realistic diagnosis, to work with the strengths of our economy. The solutions have to be inclusive.
In recent months, various groups have come out to protest against Mali's deteriorating situation and the changes made to its constitution. Cissé hopes to unify all those currently dissatisfied with current President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta.
A president who's in power, in office today with a negative record, all opponents can feed on that. It nourishes us. This is something we should be pleased about. We are not running an anti-President Keïta campaign, as that would make no sense.
This is the third time that Cissé has stood for president. So what are his chances?
The incumbent president has a record to uphold, and the opposition just has to contest this record. And this makes things much easier for Soumaïla Cissé. But be careful, it's still extremely difficult and would be actually historic if an incumbent president lost to an opposition candidate.
However, in the last presidential election in 2013, after international forces recaptured northern Mali from rebels, Cissé took just 19% of the first round.
Well, that's all we have time for right now. There's more world news and comment coming right up. Do stay tuned if you can.